character. What I undertake, that I do. Give me the secrets of a master mason instantly, for I will take your life.
I will not.
What? Still persist? Then die.
For centuries, they met in darkness, behind locked doors and guarded temples. Presidents, prime ministers, billionaires, many have whispered oaths in the shadows of the Freemasons. We were never supposed to know what happens in those secret meetings. Never. But something strange is happening right now. Secrets once locked away are starting to leak out. On social media, banned footage of Masonic rituals has surfaced, blurred videos of men in aprons and white gloves performing mysterious ceremonies. Millions have watched in shock as handshakes and punts known only to insiders flash across their screens. At the same time, one of Freemasonry's top leaders, Reverend Canon Dar, Joseph Morrow, the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Scotland, suddenly resigned without warning, no reason given. Just gone. Here's the real kill cake. A trove of leaked documents has appeared, pages never meant for the public eye, and they reveal the deepest secrets of the Freemasons' highest rank, the 33rd degree. One of these documents, a 150-year-old book written by a 33rd degree Mason himself, exposes everything: the hidden teachings, the forbidden practices, the truths that only the elite of the elite were ever meant to know. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what the Freemasons have been hiding at the 33rd degree and why knowing this could change the way you see reality itself. Think about it: an organization older than the United States, with members at the highest levels of power, swearing loyalty in secret. You might have heard the rumors, the handshakes, the symbols, the idea that Freemasons run the world from behind the scenes. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on Freemasonry's darkest secrets. We're diving straight into the heart of the secret chamber, into the 33rd degree, the highest level of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Stay with me, because this story is about to get intense. It's a tale of power, mystery, and a truth so shocking it was kept under lock and key for generations. And it all starts with understanding how Freemasonry hides its secrets in plain sight. Imagine for a moment you're a new member of a Masonic lodge in the 1800s. You've passed the basic rituals, memorized the passwords, learned the strange handshakes. You've even enacted a dramatic play about a murdered temple builder. You feel proud, initiated, part of the club. They call you a Master Mason, a 3rd degree Mason, and you wear a plain white apron as a badge of honor. To the outside world, you are a Freemason, with all the mystique that carries. You think you're in on the secret, but here's the truth: you've only been allowed into the foyer, the outer court of the temple. Unknown to you, towering above, are 30 more degrees of secrets that you're not even aware exist. You've heard whispers in the lodge, tales of higher degrees, something called the Scottish Rite, where the real knowledge is kept. Perhaps you shrug it off, maybe it's just rumor or reserved for a rare few. Then one night you catch a glimpse of a lavish ceremony in another room, older men wearing crimson caps embroidered with 33. They speak in low voices. You see one raise a jeweled, encrusted sword and others bowing their heads. Before you can process it, a door slams shut. A fellow Mason gently ushers you away. "That's not for us to see," he says. Freemasonry is structured like a pyramid. At the base, tens of thousands of regular members share in fellowship, charity, and those first 3 degrees, the Blue Lodge degrees, d'apprentice, entered o' craft, Master Mason. They know some symbols, a few allegorical lessons about morality, and they think that's the end of it. But it's not. Above them lies the Scottish Rite with degrees 4 through 32, revealing more elaborate myths and philosophies to those deemed worthy. And above all, almost mythical in status, is the 33rd degree, an invitation, only honor given to those they've shown exceptional service or, perhaps, exceptional potential to serve a larger agenda. And most Masons never reach that pinnacle. In fact, most don't even know what's up there, and that's by design. One infamous third-degree Mason, Albert Pike, admitted as much over a century ago. Pike was a Confederate general, a scholar of the occult, and author of a massive tome titled Morals and Dom of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. This book, published in 1871, was never intended for the public or even for rank-and-file Masons. It was given only to those in the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite, and even then, only to those who had reached the higher degrees. On the very first pages, Pike warns that the blue degrees of the first three are but the outer court or portico of the temple. He goes on to say, essentially, that the initiates in the lower degrees are deliberately misled, left to imagine they understand the symbols, when in truth they don't. Think about that, an organization telling its own members straight up that it's okay to mislead them until they prove themselves worthy of more. Pike wrote, "It is not intended that he shall understand either the symbols, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them." Lower-level Masons are fed innocuous interpretations. Oh, that symbol just represents charity, or this ritual is just a play about loyalty. They accept it, feeling enlightened. Meanwhile, the true meanings, the ones that could shake their understanding of everything, are reserved for the inner circle. When that revelation leaked, that quote from Pike's book, you can imagine the uproar. Many Masons themselves refused to believe that their beloved fraternity would keep them in the dark. But the evidence was there in black and white, written by one of Freemasonry's greatest scholars, a man who shaped the very structure of the Scottish Rite. Pike essentially revealed a truth about power. There are always layers. Most people will be content with simple stories, but a few will dig deeper for real knowledge. Freemasonry was built exactly on that principle. Now, you might be wondering, what's the point of having these layers? Why create a system where 99% of members get a sanitized version of the truth, while a select few climb into the hidden sanctum? The answer lies in one word: power. Knowledge is power, especially secret knowledge. The architects of modern Freemasonry, like Pike and others, understood that if you want to influence the world, you need two tiers: one to provide a respectable public face, see charity, brotherhood, community service, all the good works your local Masonic lodge is known for, and another to quietly cultivate and guard the real knowledge that can influence society behind the scenes. Let's pause and digest that for a second. We have a secret society where even the secrets have secrets. If that sounds like something out of a Dan Brown novel, you're not far off. In fact, Dan Brown's thriller, The Lost Symbol, opens with a scene of a man being initiated into the 30th degree inside the spectacular temple room of the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C., the headquarters of the Scottish Rite. Brown paints a lurid picture, a ritual oath where the initiate drinks wine from a human skull and swears that it should turn to poison in his throat if he ever breaks his vow. Dramatic, absolutely, but here's the chilling part: that scene was inspired by real events. Over a century ago, a breakaway Masonic group known as the New Scottish Rite actually did have a 33rd degree ritual involving a human skull and a deadly oath. Let that sink in: a real ritual, performed by real Masons, where the candidate sipped wine from a skull as a symbol of mortality and invoked death upon himself if he betrayed the brotherhood. So when Masonic officials today insist, "Oh, we don't do anything that crazy, that's all fiction," that they're kind of telling the truth. The mainstream Scottish Rite claims its third degree ceremony as a tame, honorific affair, a fancy certificate, a wipe, a few speeches and congratulations. No skulls, no spooky oaths, at least not anymore. but history shows that the line between official and renegade Freemasonry can blur. The Surnew group was considered illegitimate by Albert Pike's faction, but they operated for years in New York, initiating influential men into those higher mysteries with all the morbid flair of an occult ritual. And who's to say some of those forbidden practices didn't continue quietly elsewhere? Already, you can sense how high the stakes are. This isn't just a bunch of old guys playing dress-up with funny aprons and secret handshakes. We're talking about people so committed to secrecy, so reverent of their hidden knowledge, that they swore blood-curdling oaths and enforced them. I mean, in the old days, if a member dared to print the Masonic passwords or expose the rituals, the consequences were, let's just say, severe. One story stands out above all: the saga of Captain William Morgan in 1826. Morgan was an ex-Mason in New York who decided to write a book spilling the secrets of Freemasonry's first 3 degrees to the public. He thought people had a right to know what was happening behind those closed lodge doors. The local Masons were not amused. Before the book could be published, Morgan was mysteriously kidnapped and vanished, never to be seen again. Many believe the Freemasons murdered him for his betrayal. The scandal that followed was so intense it ignited America's first third-party political movement, the Anti-Masonic Party, and led to Freemasonry's membership plummeting for a time. Imagine a major movement in the 1830s United States built solely on exposing and destroying the Freemasons, all triggered by the disappearance of one whistleblower. If that doesn't tell you how seriously Masons guard their secrets, nothing will. And remember, Morgan was set to expose only the entry-level secrets, the grips, the simple rituals of the Blue Lodge. If revealing the low-level secrets cost him his life, what would happen to someone who tried to expose the 33rd degree secrets? Luckily, few have dared, and those who did were usually insiders speaking in coded language. But that's what makes these newly leaked documents so explosive. We're not relying on hearsay from an outsider. We have the actual words of 33rd degree Masons themselves describing their hidden teachings. So, what exactly is the 33rd degree? Officially, it's called the Sovereign Grand Inspector General. It's often bestowed as an honorary degree, a kind of lifetime achievement award for dedicated members. You can't just sign up or test into it. You must be chosen. In many jurisdictions, a 33rd degree Masons, the level just below, might be nominated after years of service, then voted on by the Supreme Council, the governing body of the Scottish Rite. Only a handful are selected each year. It's exclusive, very exclusive. Some Masonic historians admit that fewer than one in every several thousand Masons will ever see a 33Z ceremony in person. Who are these chosen few? A quick glance at history is revealing. Many of the men who shaped the modern world sat at the very top of the Masonic pyramid. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the U.S. president who led America through the Great Depression and World War II, a 33rd degree Mason. J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director who virtually created modern law enforcement and kept secret files on countless public figures, a 33rd degree Mason. Winston Churchill, Britain's unyielding prime minister during W. Yes, he too was a 33U Mason. General Douglas MacArthur, the famous U.S. Army commander, 33s. Even pop culture icons like Walt Disney received the 33rd degree after subtly infusing Masonic and esoteric symbolism into his works for decades. The list goes on. Truman, a U.S. president who dropped the atomic bomb, also a Grand Master of his Masonic lodge, Lyndon B. It raises the question, do these people rise to power because they are exceptional individuals, or do they rise because their brethren in the secret society have opened certain doors for them, sharing knowledge and connections that vault them ahead of their peers? Perhaps it's both. But one thing is certain: if you look at corridors of power in the 20th century, you'll find Masonic symbols lurking in the background. The U.S. Dollar Bill's all-seeing eye and pyramid didn't just appear out of nowhere. Freemason Franklin Roosevelt's administration added those in 1935, and his vice president Henry Wallace, so also a Mason, was instrumental in that choice. Washington, D.C.'s very street layout, full of pentagrams and geometric alignments, was designed by Masons, even the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol was laid in a Masonic ceremony by George Washington wearing a Masonic apron. The Freemasons' fingerprints are subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, everywhere. But what do the thirds know that others don't? Let's get to the juicy heart of it. Thanks to the leaked writings, particularly Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, we have clues, and they point to something far deeper than charity and camaraderie. They point to a kind of esoteric philosophy, one that, if true, allows a tiny group to direct the thoughts and destinies of the masses. Pike hints at this repeatedly. He describes Masonry as a successor to the ancient mystery schools of Egypt and Greece. In the 30-sin degree, Master of the Royal Sacred, he writes that the occult knowledge of the ancient Magi, the science of Abraham and Orpheus, of Confucius and Zoroaster, was passed down through secret initiations, concealed under layers of allegory. He explicitly ties Freemasonry's highest rites to the traditions of the Gnostics, the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, and the Illuminati. Yes, the Illuminati, a real historical secret society founded in 1776 Bavaria, which infiltrated Masonic lodges in Europe. According to Pike, all these groups were caretakers of the same core truth, a truth communicated in symbols and rituals, a truth so potent it had to be cloaked in secrecy. What is this truth? Pike dances around it, speaking of this word alternately lost and found through the ages. He implies it's a single profound understanding, perhaps even a name of God or a key to harnessing divine power. He writes cryptically about how religion and myth hide teachings that only the elect, the chosen initiates, truly grasp. To boil it down, it seems the highest Freemasons believe they possess the same knowledge that empowered prophets, magicians, and great leaders throughout history, a knowledge of how the universe really works, beneath the surface. This isn't about having some political connections, this is bigger. It's almost cosmic in scale, understanding the forces of creation, the link between the spiritual and material, and how a person's will can interface with those forces. Sounds heavy, right? Let's ground it in something more concrete. One recurring theme in Masonic writings is symbolism, that symbols and rituals aren't just meaningless ceremonies, they are tools that can shape reality. At first glance, that sounds absurd. How can a symbol change reality? It's just an image. How can a ritual alter anything outside the room it's performed in? But consider this: symbols carry ideas, and ideas shape people's beliefs, and people's beliefs shape their actions and what they manifest in the world. If you know how to implant a symbol or an idea into someone's mind, you can, in a way, control a part of their reality. Modern advertising and propaganda operate on this principle, but Freemasons were arguably pioneers of the practice. The square and compass, the all-seeing eye, the twin pillars, the number 33, these icons aren't just random. Masons will tell you the compass and square remind them to live a balanced life of morality and reason, or that the eye represents God watching. But at the 33rd degree, they learn far more specific uses of these symbols. As Pike put it, symbols are the vehicles of the most profound truths. In fact, he warns that anyone who thinks the symbols are mere allegory or pretty designs is an idiot, yes, in polite 19th century phrasing, of course. To the adepts, symbols are programs that, when repeated and implanted in societies, can influence subconscious minds on a massive scale. Take the all-seeing eye on the US dollar. To the average American, it's just a weird emblem on their money. They barely notice it. But subconsciously, over years, that symbol can instill a sense that an unseen authority is always watching, that the system is bigger than the individual. It normalizes the idea of a grand hierarchy, Or consider the Masonic obelisks. There's one towering in Washington, D.C., at the Washington Monument, one in Vatican City, one in the heart of London. By placing these ancient Egyptian symbols of power in the centers of Western civilization, the hidden hand of Masonry might be signaling, or even energizing, the dominance of their ideals over those regions. It's like playing a chess game on a global scale, using symbols as pieces. But it doesn't stop at symbols. Words themselves are used like spells. Think about it. When a Mason is initiated, he doesn't just walk into the lodge, he undergoes a ritual and speaks certain oaths. Those oaths, repeated with solemn intent, reprogram his identity. He swears that he will forever be loyal to his brothers, that he'll obey the order's rules, even if it means helping a brother before taking care of himself or his non-Mason neighbors. In some rites, he even swears to conceal a brother's crime, with some exceptions, and to always uphold the fraternity's interest. The very act of speaking these promises in a sacred context binds him psychologically. Words have power, ask any psychologist or any priest. Repetition of phrases, as so mote it be, I do solemnly swear, creates belief, and belief drives action. The 33rd degree Masons understand this at a master level. They know how to craft mottos and slogans that move nations. Is it any wonder that a 33 Mace like FDR was a master of the radio address, rallying a despairing populace with phrases like, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself," or that Winston Churchill's oratory practically cast spells over his citizens to steel them for war. They weren't born with those rhetorical skills, they honed them, possibly drawing on the secrets of influence passed down in Masonry. Now, beyond the psychological aspect, let's delve into the forbidden spiritual knowledge that 33rd degree members are exposed to. Here's where things take a turn for the mystical, and frankly, the territory gets controversial. Many mainstream Masons will tell you, we're not a religion, we're not a cult, it's just fraternity and philosophy. But at the highest levels, there is undeniably a spiritual dimension to their teachings. The leaked documents and accounts suggest that high-degree Freemasonry teaches ascension of the self, essentially how a human being can become something greater, tapping into what one might call divine power. One particularly controversial aspect is the way some Masonic writings speak of Lucifer. Now, when you hear that name, you probably think of the devil. This is where a lot of the Freemasons or Satanists' fear comes from. But inside their literature, it's not so black and white. Remember Albert Pike. In Morals and Dogma, he writes about Lucifer, but not as the Christian devil. He uses the term in its original Latin sense, Lucifer meaning light-bearer. Pike and some other Masonic authors suggest that Lucifer is a symbol of the instant enlightenment, the morning star essentially, knowledge itself. At one point Pike writes, Lucifer, the light-bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, it is he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable, blinds feeble, sensual or selfish souls. Fear it not. Yes, he wrote this. Imagine how that looked to outsiders. Pike's point in context was that what the uninitiated call evil, the initiated understand as a force of enlightenment miscast by dogma. In plainer terms, the highest Masons believe they have a truer understanding of good and evil, one where the lines blur. They worship a god, but it is the god one adores without superstition, as Pike cryptically puts it, meaning they revere a supreme principle or truth, but not in the church-going, hymn-singing way. No, their worship is in study, in ritual, in the pursuit of gnosis and knowledge. To an orthodox religious person, that does look like satanic practice, especially if you're invoking the name Lucifer in any positive light. It was so explosive that in the 1890s a notorious prankster, Lo Taxil, forged letters in Pike's name to make it seem like Freemasons explicitly worshipped Satan. Taxil eventually admitted it was a hoax, but by then the association of Masonry with devil worship had firmly rooted itself in the public imagination. And even though mainstream Masonry doesn't pray to Satan, the fact remains at the 33rd degree they are taught that Luciferian symbolism of the idea of the light bearer is central to what they do. They believe knowledge brings enlightenment, enlightenment brings godlike power, and Lucifer, seen as a metaphor, is the patron of illumination, not a literal demon with horns. Still, you can see why they keep this under wraps. If the average member or the public heard Lucifer in a lodge, all hell would break loose, pun intended. So we have philosophy, psychology, and symbolism converging. The 33rd degree is not about learning a new handshake or a new password, it's an initiation into a new worldview. The final secret, if you will, is a realization that reality can be shaped by those who understand how belief works. That God heirs most know Him is just a symbol, and that the true creative force in the universe can be harnessed by enlightened men. In essence, man can become godlike through knowledge, will, and ritual. That's the underlying teaching connecting those ancient mystery schools, the Gnostics, the Templars, and the Freemasons' inner core. It's the same tempting promise that echoes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Eat this fruit, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Except here, the fruit is knowledge kept in the vaults of the 33rd degree, and not everyone is allowed a bite. Now, before you either get goosebumps or roll your eyes, let's clarify something. Whether all this is true, where all this is true, or not almost doesn't matter. What matters is they believe it's true, or act as if it is. Because if a group of highly influential people share a belief that they possess the keys to directing human destiny, they will act in unison to test and use those keys. And that can have very real consequences for the rest of us. Look at history. Revolutionaries in the 18th century, many of them Masons, orchestrated gatherings and spreads of ideas that toppled monarchies. In 1789, the French Revolution exploded, and among the revolutionaries, Freemasons were thick on the ground, using symbols like the Phrygian cap and catchphrases like frugality, fraternity, for liberty, equality, fraternity, fraternity. Interesting choice of word. The old order was decapitated, literally, and a new secular order rose, one that echoed Masonic ideals of equality, every man a brother, and reason over religious dogma. Later, in Italy's unification, the leader Giuseppe Garibaldi, a 33rd degree Mason, helped tear down papal rule and unify the nation under new ideals. In the early 20th century, even as totalitarians like Hitler and Stalin rose, they feared the Freemasons enough to ban them and send them to concentration camps. Hitler believed Freemasons were part of a Jewish Masonic conspiracy. Stalin similarly purged them. Dictators recognize a competing power center when they see one, and in many countries under fascism or communism, Masonic lodges were forced underground because their very existence, men bound by secret loyalty and higher ideals, was a threat to absolute authority. All of these threads show one thing: the inner core of Freemasonry has been pulling levers from the shadows, sometimes for what we might view as noble ends, like spreading democratic values, sometimes for more ambiguous goals, consolidating their own influence. But always guided by those hidden teachings about how to shape reality through belief and will. Let's return to the present. Why are we hearing about leaks and resignations now? Are the Freemasons losing their grip? Or is something else at play? It could be that in the information age, no secret can stay completely buried. It's getting harder for secret societies to remain in the shadows when everyone carries a high-definition camera in their pocket. A young Mason might record part of a ritual just to show a friend, and suddenly millions see it on TikTok. A disgruntled member might publish scanned pages from a private Masonic archive onto a forum, and within days, researchers worldwide are poring over it. The Brotherhood's secrets are bleeding out through the cracks of the digital age. And with Joseph Morrow's sudden resignation as a Grand Master in 2024, one wonders, was there internal turmoil? Did he step down because he wouldn't go along with something, or to avoid presiding over some coming scandal? The Grand Lodge's official line was personal reasons. But that hasn't stopped speculation that some very old skeletons are about to come out of the Masonic closet in Scotland, possibly involving misdeeds, or just the pressure of modern scrutiny. If one of the highest-ranking Masons in the world abruptly quits, something big is brewing. I'll tell you what might be happening: damage control. Freemasonry, for all its influence, ultimately relies on secrecy and public image to function. If the wider public truly believed that Masons at the 33rd degree were performing occult rituals to manipulate reality or swaying governments from behind the scenes, the backlash could be severe. Regular members would quit in droves, distancing themselves from the weird stuff. Governments might open investigations. Ordinary people might start scrutinizing every politician or CEO known to be a Mason. In short, the fraternity could crumble. So, how do you prevent that? Perhaps by letting out some secrets in a controlled way to satisfy curiosity while fiercely denying or concealing the most damning parts. Notice how the viral leaks we've seen are relatively tame: a snippet of a handshake here, a short video of a ritual prayer there. Intriguing, yes, but not earth-shattering. It's possible that some leaks are intentional, a form of psychological judo, give the masses a little peek to make them think that's all there is, meanwhile double down on guarding the real secrets. It's a classic misdirection tactic, show a part to hide the rest. However, Pike's book and others like it are out in the open now. Anyone can find morals and dogma in a library or online. The language is dense, but the truths are in there for those who look. And new whistleblowers occasionally emerge, often anonymously, claiming to be 33rd degree Masons fed up with the deception. Whether all of them are legitimate or not is hard to verify, but when you see recurring themes, like the emphasis on the pineal gland, the third eye, or the use of certain meditation techniques at high levels, or the teaching of out-of-body body travel, you start to see a picture forming of an inner order that's part mystery school, focused on spiritual transcendence, part social engineering lab focused on controlling society. Yes, you heard that right, spiritual transcendence. Not every 33rd degree Mason is necessarily fixated on world domination. Some genuinely believe that through Masonry's highest teachings, they are transforming themselves into wiser, more enlightened beings. The ritual of the 33rd degree itself, according to insiders, is deeply symbolic. There's talk of a ritualized death and rebirth. The initiate symbolically dies as his old self and is reborn as a sovereign inspector general, supposedly now above the concerns of ordinary men. Rebirth is a common theme in many esoteric traditions. Think of baptism in Christianity or the symbolic death of the ego in mystery schools. In the Masonic context, this rebirth could signify that the initiate has shed the last of his profane, non-initiate ignorance and is now fully illuminated. One can only imagine what goes through a person's mind at that moment, kneeling in a dimly lit temple, receiving secret words and signs that only maybe a few hundred people alive understand. Anointing yourself into a lineage that claims descent from Solomon's temple builders, ancient magi, and enlightened sages throughout time. It must be heady stuff, ego-boosting and humbling at once to think, I now know what the pharaohs knew, what the prophets knew. For some, it might even feel like touching the divine. But there's a flip side. With great power comes great responsibility or great temptation. If indeed at the 33rd degree they learn methods to bend reality by influencing minds, harnessing collective belief, or even metaphysical techniques, how do we know those methods won't be abused? The very secrecy that protects the knowledge also prevents oversight. History has examples of this concern. The Propaganda Deusi II Lodge scandal in Italy. In the 1970s-80s, a rogue Masonic lodge, P2, composed of politicians, bankers, and military officers, was discovered to be plotting essentially a shadow government. They had a list of members that included people at the top of Italian society, and their documents spoke of plans to manipulate the media, destabilize the government, and achieve their own agenda. When it blew up, it was a huge scandal. The Italian Prime Minister even had to resign when his ties to P2 were revealed. And among P2's crimes, a connection to the mysterious death of a Vatican banker found hanging from a bridge in London, a supposed Masonic ritual murder, by some interpretations, because the circumstances echoed a punishment for betrayal. That was a real-world conspiracy, fully exposed. A secret Masonic cell nearly took over a country's government. And though P2 was shut down, many believe its members simply regrouped under new names. The beast went back into hiding. Now, consider that P2 was just one country. What if, at the highest levels, the international supreme councils of the third degree, there is a quiet network of these elite Freemasons cooperating across borders? They wouldn't need large numbers, just a few key people in each nation's institutions, all sworn to the same ideals and secrecy. One could be in the intelligence service, another in the central bank, another in the cabinet, another running a media empire. Individually, they influence their spheres. Collectively, they nudge entire societies in directions we ordinary folks assume are just happening naturally. Am I saying there's an Illuminati like Council of 33rd degree Masons controlling everything? Not necessarily everything, but it's likely there have been ends and still are informal alliances of these illuminated ones, steering things when they can. It might not even be centrally coordinated all the time. It could be that they simply share a common playbook taught to them by their initiation, and each acts according to that conditioning, achieving a kind of coordination by default. When you deeply believe you have the power to alter reality by shaping belief, you'll naturally implement that in whatever field you're in: education, art, politics, economics, and thus the tapestry is woven. Now, here's where this gets really interesting for you, the viewer. You might be thinking, okay, so a bunch of old guys have secret parties and think they run the world with magic symbols. What does that have to do with me? More than you might realize. Because if their secret is that reality is shaped by belief and identity, that secret can empower you too. This is perhaps the greatest twist. The hidden teachings of the 33rd degree, if brought into the light, could free people instead of controlling them. The truth is like a double-edged sword. Used in secret by a few, it's a tool of manipulation. But shared with the many, it becomes a tool of liberation. Imagine if everyone understood that symbols in media and pop culture are influencing them daily. They might start to reclaim their minds. Imagine if you realized that by changing your own self-perception and beliefs, you could break out of limitations. Suddenly, the elite's monopoly on reality crafting is gone. The average person could start using these techniques, positive affirmations, symbolic rituals in personal life, building their own communities of mutual empowerment. The playing field would level, at least a bit. Perhaps that's the real reason these secrets were guarded, not just because people weren't ready, as the Masons might say, but because knowledge in the hands of the many dilutes the power held by the few. Yet, here we are. The cat is creeping out of the bag. Today, you and I have discussed things that a 33rd degree Mason from 50 years ago might have been horrified to hear openly talked about. And we're just scratching the surface. There's always more to explore. But already, you might feel your perspective shifting. Maybe a few puzzle pieces clicked in place. So that's why that symbol is everywhere. Or now I see why influential people join these societies. So, what's the takeaway from all this? It's this: the Freemasons, especially at the 33rd degree, are not just a men's club with goofy rituals. They are the inheritors of a very old, very potent understanding of how the world and the human mind work. They cloak that understanding in allegory and metaphor, builders laying stones, light versus darkness, the compass and square, but behind each of those metaphors is a technique or truth of human experience. And for a long time, they've managed to keep that knowledge mostly to themselves, doling it out only to those they deem worthy. But now the veil is lifting. Whether by design or by accident, the world is learning bits and pieces of what goes on in those mahogany, panelled lodges and candlelit temple rooms. And it's equal parts fascinating and frightening. One thing is clear: knowledge is power, and in the age of information, the old gatekeepers of knowledge are losing their grip. The forbidden is becoming accessible. The hidden is being revealed. And we have a choice to shy away in denial or to face it head-on and learn. If you've made it this far, you're already part of this awakening. You now know more about the inner workings of Freemasonry than probably 99% of people out there. You've seen how the 33rd degree secrets encompass everything from psychological tricks to ancient occult philosophies, all aimed at one thing: empowerment, for better or worse. And here's a thought: this video itself is a kind of ritual, not in the spooky sense, but in that we've taken a journey from ignorance to illumination together. Consider this your own mini-initiation into the truth behind the veil. No oath required, thankfully. You don't have to drink from a skull. But you have symbolically stepped into the inner chamber and seen the robed figures move behind the curtain. Once you see, you can't unsee. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about these 33rd degree secrets? Did any particular revelation blow your mind? Do you believe that Freemasons really use these techniques to influence society? Or do you think it's exaggerated? Maybe you have a personal story about Freemasonry in your family, or a theory we didn't cover. Share it in the comments. This is the kind of topic where crowd wisdom can uncover even more. Let's get a real conversation going. Don't be afraid to dive in. After all, secrecy only survives in silence, and we're here to break it. If you found this deep dive as thrilling and eye-opening as I did, then hit that like button to let more people discover these hidden truths. It helps this video reach more seekers like you, and make sure to subscribe because we are far from done exploring. There are so many secret societies, mysteries, and hidden knowledge out there, and in each video we peel back another layer. By subscribing and ringing that notification bell, you won't miss our next journey into the unknown, and trust me, the next one might be even more shocking. Knowledge shouldn't belong to the few in shadow, it should light up the world. So join our community of truth seekers. Share this video with friends who can handle it, because these discussions ignite awareness. Together, we can shine light on even the darkest secrets. Thank you for watching and being part of this discovery. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and as always, question everything. The truth is out there, and we're going to find it. Until next time, keep seeking the light.